Well, I am absolutely delighted to be able to welcome Frank Piller, whom I have known for well over a decade and have always been excited by all the work that you've been doing at the leading edge, whether it was mass customization, Industry 4.0, or avatars. Avatars, what is that, Frank? What's happening with avatar right now? No? I thought that an avatar was going to jump in and take my slot away.
Well, hi, welcome to my talk. My name is Frank Piller. I'm Professor for Technology and Innovation Management at RWTH Aachen University. This avatar was created out of a simple scan, just a simple picture actually. And it's a work of Loop, an innovative company in Düsseldorf, Germany, where I'm very happy to serve on the board and learn by doing so a lot about the opportunities of new digital technologies. This is exactly what we want to explore together in the next minutes in our lecture. But before this.
Well. There goes the role of the moderator and the person introducing our wonderful speakers. And I thought I was relatively safe in that role. Anyway, very excited to hear from you, Frank. Tell us more.
Yeah, welcome to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And let's talk a little bit about avatars. And it should be also a little bit of fun talk and going into one specific perspective of what we saw about living in virtual worlds in the last weeks and months. So actually, the video you saw was produced in a fraction of seconds out of just a single picture. It's a scan done with a dedicated scanner. And then I just actually put the voice in my cell phone, and then an AI was converting it to some pre-recorded moves. Pretty cooler. And the interesting thing is the company started with something very different, with really printing humans. As originally we thought that it's cool to have you not as a family picture, but as a real mini action figure on your desk. And it actually works. And the typical target customer is this tech-savvy grandfather who wants to have a figurine with his or her grandson. However, then we realized everyone under the age of 25 actually said, do we really need these figurines, this 3D printed stuff? Perhaps it's sufficient to just give us this digital model you're creating to do this 3D print. As with this avatar, we could do cool things. I would like to put it on a dating platform, in a computer game. With this, there was a pivot of Loop really from the idea of creating figurines into a company producing avatars. And it has been a long ride, and actually everything what Oliver Gastmann told you about business models just before, I really now experience at my own body, not just as a professor, but also as a small part of this company. And while doing so, I also learned a lot about what I would see a new layer of the internet economy really based about avatars. So just this is how this particular thing starts as a special scanner actually built here in Aachen. It's one of the labs of the universities. You create out of 64 pictures a mesh and then create these avatar. We started with 2 hours, more than 2 hours of human modeling work. Now we are down to 5 to 6 minutes. We'll be down to 0 minutes of human work. It's all done with a machine learning algorithm. And you can do pretty good things, as you may see in the lower right corner. That's actually Vladimir Puralek, the CEO of Loop, like animated GIFs. Big network of scanners, in the moment closed because of COVID, but they will reopen, and different kind of solutions. And I will talk more about this in a second. Could work with some large clients, but also many, many thousands, hundreds of thousands of consumers here. So what's the bigger picture? The bigger picture of this rise of the avatar economy. Well, we saw this before with machines. As one of the underlying principles of Industry 4.0 or digitalization per se is that we have so-called cyber-physical systems. So it's a former physical thing, like a machine tool, a printing machine, but also a car that has sensors and is producing some data while it goes. We store the data, and on top of this, we have something we often now call algorithms, digital services, which is a right core provider of the value in modern service-based business models. And so there's this concept of the digital twin, here illustrated with an old picture of Siemens. And we always had a digital twin, let's say, of a product in form of a CAD file in development. We now get the production data, but we especially get the usage data of this part out there when it's deployed as an asset in industry. And lots of modern business model ideas are really built on the perception of this data, of digital twins or shadows, or however we want to call it. Well, and so what about the digital twin of us humans? Sounds perhaps a little bit strange, but actually there is already a lot of this information available. So a picture I stole from Hive, that in companies we now started to enhance the internal data we had in our own systems by ecosystem data from retailers, website, data brokers, and so on. But especially now with really external big data from social media streams, apps, and so on. So this can lead to really nice examples. Well, we all go back shopping, but perhaps we don't want to spend so much time in the supermarket because of COVID. And so there are apps now which help you to scan a real aisle in a supermarket. And then just these food items are blinking on your app that are good or bad with regard, for example, your allergies or your personal taste, like here by a startup like Now. Or there are entire companies building the business model out of this. Jessie Theng, a founder of a business in MIT grad in Boston, and her company is Choosy. And Choosy is a fashion company just consisting out of 3 algorithms. One, scanning Instagram in real time for fashion trends and analyzing these fashion trends. Algorithm 2, getting this information and having a generative design algorithm and creating new garments. And then actually, luckily, her parents have a small manufacturing of textiles in China. And then they produce these computer-generated textiles within 2 weeks. And during that time, algorithm number 3 scans Instagram for potential influencers and early adopters to whom to sell these items. So an entire fashion company out of 3 algorithms, but especially based on the very rich data and digital representation of millions of consumers out there, somehow on our digital twins. And well, that's what I just said, but this is really just the beginning. We could create digital twins of each of us, of our customers, for really ultimate personalization, as just indicated, a new level of growth. But perhaps some of you already saw tons of legal and ethical nightmares, especially if you are German. So what is it, this avatar economy? Well, as an academic, we need a proper definition. The avatar represents a personal digital twin and thus enable us to participate in online offerings and virtual worlds in a completely new way. We really built on this person, one way how it can be produced, I just showed you. And building blocks are really these fast, cost-effective avatar creation. They used to be these small toolkits, and some of them were good, but now we are really able to produce what you see here very quickly, very, very cheaply. There's a very high flexibility of these avatars. They are based on an open format, so you can put them really in all kind of 3D gaming engines, advanced CAD systems, and so on. We strongly believe, and we're doing a lot of research about this, that privacy and data sovereignty is really important. I'll talk, if I have sufficient time, a little bit about this at the end. And of course, this can give rise to really radical new business models. But as usual, it's nothing new. I was on the board of a company called My Virtual Model, founded by the wonderful Louis Gouet in Montreal, and they did exactly this more than 10 years ago. The idea of that company, My Virtual Model, was to really create the standard of virtual identity in that, at this time, upcoming internet, to integrate, and you see these are really old slides. If you just look at MySpace, for the younger of this was something like Facebook nowadays, and to really integrate all these silos where you had perhaps an identity into one virtual identity. And what is better to put this together as your avatar? So, and we could convince quite a lot of large companies at this time, but it was much too early, much too expensive. And so My Virtual Model ended on this graveyard of big internet companies with a great idea, but too early. Well, now a restart. Now the technology is there. Now we have augmented reality. We have cheap glasses. We have much higher computing power. And so now we can do something like this. This actually, as well, it's not my boss, but one of my most important stakeholders in the state, Mr. Pinkwart, the Minister of Innovation and Economics here in North Rhine-Westphalia. And of course, he got an avatar, and you'll see now I can play around with my minister. It's pretty cool. But we could really do very rich online collaborations, online gaming, dating. And Oliver Gastmann mentions this briefly. I believe that the gaming industry is really the forefront of most industries, and they are ahead 3 to 5 years of other industries with regard to scalability, with regard to business models, with regard of using AI, but also with regard of using avatars for really rich, compelling experience. Online education will come to that, digital try-on of garments, ergonomic workplace studies, sport and health platforms, perhaps real sustainability, to really replace lots of physical activities, a long list of opportunities, and especially in the post-corona economy. I was involved in my last weeks with a big government body for the German government, where we really thought about propositions for the future of digital business models in the post-corona economy. And I don't go into this now into depth, just an advertisement for a webinar I will do later on. Look it up in the PDF slides. And in this work group, we came up with a couple of propositions, and avatars really work perfectly here. So, well, of course, we'll get a boost of digitalization and digital business models. But one of the propositions is that physical distancing will stay, as we just like it, but perhaps as we also get more cautious in office, but also in manufacturing. And of course, physical distancing in manufacturing is much more exciting as a innovation case than it is with the home office. And so we actually, well, and Oliver said it very nicely in his opening talk, we will not really see new trends, but we will see a strong reinforcement of trends. So all these remote services in manufacturing will get a big boost of remote servicing, of configurations, and so on. But in the upper right corner, you see a very recent installation of Deutsche Telekom or the daughter T-Systems. As Deutsche Telekom, before the crisis, had built a number of very nice physical innovation labs, customer engagement centers. And now with COVID, well, all this infrastructure had to close. But of course, they still wanted to interact very rich with the customers. So they brought in avatars into this and really reopened the innovation centers in a virtual world, but with real people, well, with almost real representations of people. As the avatar you saw of myself at the very beginning, I can also control in real time with a very simple VR headset, and just using actually my cell phones as sensors. I don't need actually these handles. And an interaction in VR, which is a rich one, but if you really see an avatar of the person in front of you, it's a much richer one. And so, sorry, it's a German, but T-Systems opens this virtual innovation centers with avatars of the key personnel. We worked with with a small bank in Germany, And if you as a private consumer now get an investment product in Germany, because of consumer compliance and regulatory requirements, you have to go through tons and tons of documents, where you all confirm this, and this. This can be done with robo-advisors. But if the robo-advisor is a sales, the bank clerk, from your local branch in your village, your acceptance of these kind of technologies may be much, much higher. So we created avatars of all the clerks in the banks and also giving them more time to really do meaningful work instead of going through pages and pages of compliance documents. There's a very nice Swiss company, Mipo, that is easily creating avatars for virtual try-ons with a very sophisticated way. Really like that. And this leads us immediately to one of the other propositions we have, flexibilization of works, and really demanding new ways of how we learn. And I think as professors, and many of you in the audience are academics, this is what we really had to learn. And there's one company, Axilium, they wanted to sell me this pitch 2 or 3 weeks ago, got a presentation from them, and they say, let's do VR classrooms. And I said, well, actually we sell them as well, but thanks, I now learned about our competition. But they had some great slides, which I now steal with pride. And they really say VR classrooms are much better than some of the other online experiments and can just resonate it. As a professor, we always feel it really frustrated how many of our students turn off their videos if we try to do engaged teaching via Zoom. Well, if you're all online in a VR headset, first, you have to focus as a student. There's no WhatsApp, no other things in parallel. So 1 hour of really intense teaching in VR, I believe, is as effective as 4 hours in Zoom. Secondly, but you can't also do it not too long. Also, you can engage in a much richer world, in a much richer sense. You can really also do even practical exercises. So this is what they say. But then the VR classrooms they use have general avatars, very generic things. And our really learning was, if you have now the real representations, the real digital twins of your peers, it's a much richer experience. So this is actually what we are doing already in Aachen before COVID. Here you see my colleague Nacken, and he's teaching water engineering. And one of his classes is crisis management if there's a high flooding in an area. And these students become engineers in water management. They are trained in crisis management. And traditionally, they do role plays, how to communicate to some citizens that they have to leave their houses as the flood is coming. Part of their education. And now we scan all students. They do it in a role play in VR, and the role play in VR is much more intense. You can simulate it much richer than quickly in the classroom. So they started actually to use this even before COVID. And we'll now have scanners here and want to scan really tons of many of our students. Or with DUP, as one of the COVID measures, we realized there are all these high schools and universities in Germany, at least did great. High schools, okay. But the elementary schools were horrible with regard to digitalization. Perhaps 5% were working and 95% had no idea. So this is a thing, and I just started here.
Berechnung Satz des Pythagoras. Stell dir also ein rechtwinkliges Dreieck vor. Wir wollen wissen, wie lang die Seiten A, B und C des Dreiecks sind. Die Seitenlängen A und B können wir dank des
into some teaching videos that can be pre-recorded, that can be put from stock, but again to keep the emotional attachment to her pupils. And this really leads to new dimensions of digital business model innovation. At this stage, I just have to do it for my PhD students, a totally unrelated but important request. There's a great session 1402 on Wednesday, where we actually talk about our COVID research, and also a business model collection, crowdsourcing thing. It's super cool. I don't explain it here, but just do very quickly a screenshot, go to this website and participate. As we are collecting patterns in the COVID crisis area, and actually using avatars is one of these patterns. So we really come to truly new dimensions for digital business model and innovation, but of course with many open questions. I'm coming to an end, Bettina, no worries. Here, so some insights from an Ericsson study, and this is one of the very few, well, not really empirical studies, but let's say anecdotal evidences, weak signals we have. And they surveyed people with experience in VR and augmented reality, mainly gamers. And they all really loved the idea of avatars. And see, it's a magic being in two places simultaneously, you know, different to phone calls or chats or even videos. And with avatars becoming increasingly realistic, however, they also thought it may be really difficult to judge where I am. I am now in Aachen, well, you see my office. But actually, I could have done, if I would have been more secure with the technology and Zoom, give you this presentation in a virtual room just with my avatar. And 48% of these users think the avatars will mimic their face. So in the end, no one really will realize, is it me, is it the avatar, and the technology actually is there already. 47% predict that it will be difficult in the future to see if politicians and celebrities are real or if it's just a digital avatar. You saw Mr. Pinkford, and you actually may know that 99% of all pictures of cars you see in a magazine, in advertisement, are no real pictures, but all rendered from virtual models. 50% of consumers want avatars to represent them in different places at the same time, at work, school, you know, lousy parties. But also 40% worry that they will be held responsible if their avatars does something illegal. So there actually is a strong agenda we have to worry how to really keep this personal data. But I'm afraid this is another lecture, and I will skip these slides, but if you're interested in it, just get the PDF of this presentation and look it through. I think it's rather self-explanatory. So let's come to an end, and I would say there really is a new force with this.
You traitor! You regret this.
Well, that was actually not a dupe avatar, but one created as an advertisement for the last Star Wars film. And it's really an open agenda for innovation. And so, and actually you may even use, and this is just my proposition to you without answers, using avatars in innovation management, ethnography in virtual worlds, virtual collaboration, real virtual innovation labs. We use personas in design thinking. We'll represent them as an avatar for much richer, more empathic engagement. Perhaps you use it for concept testing, real, much better simulation of test markets, virtual tryouts in launch, customer education for adoption, and probably many, many other opportunities that are just lurking around the corner. With this, I'm at my end. I hope you liked it. That's a little bit food for thought, and I'm very happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Absolutely fantastic, Frank, as ever, absolutely fantastic. And yes, we do have questions coming through, and a couple of them are around the ethics and, you know, the possible dark side of avatars. And I always feel reminded with this whole trend towards technology and digitizing everything is, you know, are we firmly on the track to the Matrix, to realizing the movie Matrix, so that we are becoming subservient to generating energy for all the technology and robots and avatars and whatnot?
Yeah, it's a great question. And now really when we're coming over 50, I regret that I didn't read more science fiction literature in my past. And I think I really could educate us more about the present. Well, I think actually the last weeks told us differently. We learned in a physical world, but as you said in your opening, you know, we lived in a virtual world, more or less, in an online world, but we really liked and we miss these physical interactions. So for me, it's not an either or, but it's really complementary. And probably now, everyone of us knows, if we go back to normal, we will not travel as much as many of us did, as a lot of this was not necessary. And this is where I send my avatar, or where I would like to have a virtual interaction that is as rich as possible. But however, there will be other interactions we really would love to have physical, going to so the conference day is virtual perfectly. The conference dinner, really, I would love to have virtual and not as an avatar. So I think this is also some of the balance and probably of the competitive factors of company to learn what really is working and what is not.
There's a very interesting question about what happens when one avatar hits another. So what are sort of, the implications of ethics or for ethics in the world of avatars?
Yeah, and I think this is what we have to learn. Perhaps it's a little bit grown up question, as I think some of the younger people already developed this. And part of the slides I skipped is, and we did quite some research on that, is that we have to build something what we call a social contract. And this has to be co-created by the users, both with regard to privacy and ethics. And this is nothing we can't, give to a community, but what the community have to build. And actually in gaming communities, this is happening. So, but this is also what we see with our students here at Aachen University in these avatar-based teaching rooms, in these role plays. And we have psychologists working with them, as in the role play, they should go to the edge. And this is actually what they do. In the real role play with real people, they really don't hit each other, as they should do. In an avatar, they can do it. But this is part of the teaching experience, actually, to then reflect on it and say, well, as you mimicked a citizen, you think you really would have hit this engineer, or was it just playing around? So actually, I think if you use it purposefully, it can really bring up the message much, much better. But it's a great question, actually, and I don't have a final answer.
Yeah, I guess, like with all of these things, I sometimes wonder whether all the possibilities, the technology is emerging much faster than our human ability to develop some rules and some ethics around these things. So I think it's actually quite a big challenge. I also have a question in terms of can you give your take on the application of avatar economy to the public health sector? That has also had to adapt quite dramatically in terms of this particular crisis.
Yeah, so 2 concrete projects we are doing here in Germany. One was with a big Uniklinik Essen, which actually wanted to use avatars twofold. First, for patient education. So we were really doing a virtual representation of the hospitals, of the nurses, of the doctors. So patients could have a simulation of their patient experience before coming to the hospital to really lower anxiety and fear. And then here in Aachen, actually, we have the biggest medical simulator in Europe, an entire building with 14 simulation rooms, where we now trained all these medical students that became COVID helpers, 600 of them on that. And this is a big physical simulator with 14 wheel-size operation theaters and with $1 million a piece virtual humans, real physical virtual humans that can have pain and all that stuff. Augmenting this with much cheaper virtual, avatars, again for role play situations. It makes a lot of sense. And so I would say the usage is not so much on a medical education. There are other means that are better, but on all the social interactions, which is very important for a doctor. I think for this, we can use this perfectly.
Wonderful. And maybe one very last quick question, because it's come up a couple of times. It was also some observations with when Second Life was really big. How much are avatars actually reflecting the real person rather than being the idealized,
yes.
perfected, superwoman, superman avatar?
Again, not either or. We believe there is a room for our fantasies, and there are many websites taking care of this. But especially in B2B, and Group is mainly a B2B company, we want the real person. And so we believe as much as there's room for fantasies, there's room for very rich real interactions. So one company now, we did virtual onboarding. So companies, new employees coming to the company, on their first date, they meet the CEO. And there you really would like to meet the real CEO and not a fantasy of your CEO.
Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Frank, thank you so much. Delighted very excited. So I just sort of slightly confused when this slide came back up. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for participating. Thank you for your great question. And I will leave it at that and wish you a very, very enjoyable rest of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you in the virtual world next time.